On today's show, the San Diego Padres have a lot of questions still yet to be answered for this offseason, and one of them is like, why hasn't AJ Preller been extended yet?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the business, your team every day for Friday, January 9th. As always, I'm your host, Javier Reyes, who has been hosting this podcast for 6 years now, soon to be 7, and I've been hosting it and also writing about the team for various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. We love FanDuel very much. The wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost packs every NFL playoff game day. Be sure to go check that out. And be sure to go check out this podcast wherever you get your pods from. Go check out the YouTube where I've got my virtual Petco Park background behind me. I'm right outside. You know what I mean? Really cool stuff. But for today's episode, guys, we got to talk about Dennis Lin's Athletic article talking about the biggest questions still remaining for the Padres this offseason, and give my thoughts on some of them and respond to some of your questions, because we still got a lot of questions and comments, some of them from this Dodgers fan too, because why not, right? I love responding to the Dodger folk. The boys of blue. I don't know, what is the nickname for the Dodgers? Is there like a nickname that their fans go by that I'm not familiar with? Because my old buddy said boys, whatever. That we're off topic. But guys, first let's talk about the article written by Dennis Lin on Wednesday, talking about the 3 months so far. And look, here's the thing: despite the fact that the Padres do have all these constraints, right? Despite the fact that the Padres just clearly do not have the same blockbuster energy that they did before, they've still been able to make headlines, right? And some of them bad. Right, some of them quite bad in the sense of, oh man, we're losing Dylan Cease. Oh man, we're losing Robert Suarez. Oh man, we're losing all these guys. And also, oh no, we're losing the team. The team is looking to be sold, right? But there's still been some exciting things, from Tristan McKenzie to Michael King signing, right? Like, that was a big deal. There's still a lot still to happen. And we heard rumors over the winter meetings that Preller's looking for a Soto type of deal. I don't think that would be an individual deal for what it's worth, but nonetheless, still a lot to talk about this offseason. And there's still a lot of questions. The first one that Dennis Lin gets into is, why hasn't AJ Preller been extended yet? Right? And Seidler, and this is reading from the article, in September, Seidler told The Athletic, all discussions about the future will take place at the appropriate time in the offseason. After the Padres' postseason elimination, team officials repeatedly indicated that they expected Seidler and Preller to hash out an extension in the coming weeks. Last month, Seidler told the San Diego Union Tribune that he and Preller would continue discussing a possible agreement, reiterating that the Padres would like to have him remain long-term. Now, it is 2026, and Preller is weeks from entering the season as a lame duck employee. Here's the thing. And the article brings up, by the way, complicating factor in 24, CEO Eric Grupner was extended through at least the 2029 season, an extension that lines up with Preller's contract with Stammen's deal would merely take Preller through 2028. Maybe he's seeking a longer deal is what they ask, right? And with that, if there's no long-term security, does that mean that he's going to be a little bit all in now, which is a position that, frankly, I have never seen across sports it ever turn out well, when a person who has a lot of power and GM power to be able to make moves is a lame duck or expected to be fired, and they're still there, right? So, like, now don't get me wrong, the Padres are still very much a team that could be a contender this next season, be a team that can win 90 games or high 80s games, whatever. So it's not like they are one of those other teams where they're going to be bad, right? So what I'm basically trying to get at, and I've been explaining this poorly, is that you never want to have someone who's making decisions for a team that's really bad and has a lot of assets that they could trade, right? And what I mean by that is Preller might just be like, oh, I'm getting fired, so I might as well just send away everything in the future because I ain't going to be here anymore. I don't think that that's the situation, also because that's how Preller acts regularly. Preller's been acting this way since 2015, right? Like, he's been a guy who's like, screw them prospects. We don't need them whatsoever. We're good. You know what I mean? We hate them. We're all good. We'll just find a way, as they always do, right? And we'll see if that still happens. But me personally, I think it's a little bit of a nothing burger story, not in the sense that Dennis Lin is lying or anything like that, but I'm just expecting him to be extended at some point. I think that could be one of the last things that happens of the offseason, frankly. And if it doesn't, does that mean that he could be getting fired? I don't know. I do think that there are so many things that they're trying to figure out with the Eric Grouper thing and Craig Stammen, and then also with the fact that they're, again, the ownership and all that, they're also looking at, like, hey, we've got we've got a sale that we're trying to enact. So I don't think that this is something that's like a massive deal, right? I really don't. It's still worth bringing up, right? But I think that this thing could happen either at the end of the offseason when a lot of the signings are done, or it could happen in the next few days. I really do think that that is possible with the holiday break and all that. I think that that is a likely option. I do not think that this will be AJ Preller's last year, despite how often we talk about him and debate him. He has been the guy who's presided over the total about face transformation of the Padres as we know them, and been the most exciting they've been since the late 90s. And dare I say, even earlier, they might have been more exciting. Well, not maybe as good, but they're in the World Series back in 84 as well. That team just had so much aura and so much excitement, I think, around them, that this team is very much feeling like in a similar way, except with bigger contracts that they're actually able to hand out now, right? So I don't see this as something that pans out. In terms of, I don't see this as something that plays out long, right? I just don't see a world in which that happens. I don't think that AJ Preller is going to be that way, but we'll see. And if it is actually a sign of something, then yeah, AJ Preller is going to have to show something this year, and we're going to have to see if the team plays well, right? I think that the bar for him remaining the GM should be relatively low, in the sense that unless this is a team that wins like 76 games and Tatis is hurt and Manny Machado completely it craps the bed and is useless, if Bogarts is useless, right? I think there would have to be a lot of things that go really sideways, because you also have to consider that AJ Preller is such an amazing scout that he's been able to retool the farm system and make more trades. And at the very minimum, even if they haven't always resulted in playoff wins and sustained success, it has made the team a more profitable team, a more attention deserving team in the national spotlight with ticket sales and all that sort of stuff than they ever have been, right? And I think the ownership might look at that and say, yeah, that's good. Or a prospective owner that may look to purchase the team might be like, yeah, I like that guy. He makes all the headlines and makes things super exciting. I don't care. Let's rock. You know what I mean? Like, he got me Tatis. That's all they might care about in some ways. So I don't see this being a bigger deal. But as Dennis Lin also mentioned in his article, it is at least something worth talking about. You know what else is worth talking about? Your finances, and specifically managing them well, because it can be really overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And let me tell you, that's where Rocket Money comes in, right? The versatile finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. They have an automatic transaction categorization feature. Really cool. You see exactly where your money's going each month. You can set budget goals, personalize insights, receive real-time alerts for legal transactions, upcoming bills, low balances, check your savings, loans, all that stuff in one single dashboard, so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. Guys, go check it out. It's really great. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Remember, that's Rocket Money, ROCKET money.com/locked-on. Go check it out and save today. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing. As always, let's keep talking about Dennis Lin's article and the big questions for the Padres this offseason that still remain, right? We talked about why AJ Preller hasn't been extended yet. His next question, well, let me tell you, it's the obvious one. How much do the Padres still need in regard to starting pitching, right? Injuries limited Michael King last season to fewer than 80 innings. Joe Musgrove didn't pitch at all while we recovered from Tommy John surgery. And the two veterans projected lineup behind Nick Pivetta in the opening day lineup are those two. And then there's Randy Vasquez, JP Sears, and almost no other big league ready options. So the Padres still need at least one established or semi-established starter. Multiple additions would be preferable. San Diego's deep bullpen does provide a lot of help. Jason Adam, he'll be coming back, attempting to return, right? Exactly when he'll return, I don't know. right? We'll have to see how that comes back. Maybe he'll come back later in the season, so don't count on him. But yeah, obviously this is a big one. And I think that with the Padres, I talked about this on Wednesday, so it kind of leans into that episode a lot, so you could go check that out. I just think like back end options are totally fine. I discussed how much I like Jordan Montgomery. I really do. I think that Jordan Montgomery's fine. I think Herman Marquez would be an interesting one. Alex Cobb, there's worse options to go than him, but still okay, right? Marcus Stroman, even not Martin Perez, but there's just a lot of guys out here. Tyler Anderson has produced every now and then. I just think that there are decent options out there, right? And I actually do kind of like that they signed Tristan McKenzie. Just like a little lottery ticket signing. Can he reclaim what he had before? Can he able to end the pitching lab that they've established over the past few years and built up? Can they do anything? Can Walker Buehler do anything? Is he a little bit too much name value now? Maybe, but he's 31, and I don't want to fully give up on the guy because I once predicted that dude would win a Cy Young, and he was very close multiple times. So like I wouldn't give up on him potentially as a low back end option, right? I just think that that's all they need. And if they do shed a little bit of their salary, if they are able to go out and make a trade, right? I've talked about the Marlins a lot. Turns out Edward Cabrera heading to the Cubs for their top prospect, Owen Casey. So Padres don't have that level of stuff, right? Jake Cronenworth and a bunch of random stuff. Probably not going to get that deal done. But can Jake Cronenworth be swapped for another back end starter like a Brian Bayo? Maybe. Right, maybe. I think you'd have to include some of your prospects, maybe a Cruz Schoolcraft, something like that, in that sort of trade. But again, I don't know exactly how other teams feel. I do think, though, that I agree with Dennis Lin, which is just you need to get some insurance. Because it's also, we got to be careful not to assume that Joe Musgrove is just going to be back, the end, we good. You know what I'm saying? He has had a long time to recover. He had last season, right? Now he's going to have all this offseason and all that sort of stuff. This isn't like a fast turnaround. Right. I think that that's the hope that he comes back and he's good. And I don't think that he's the type of player where Tommy John surgery could absolutely devastate him. He's not a guy that, oops, that was bad. He's not a guy that relies on velocity. Apologies, everybody. Not a guy that relies too much on velocity. He's more of a trickster type of pitcher, as I like to call them. So I do absolutely think that he could overcome it. And based on his attitude, his work ethic and all that, I really do think that he could be okay. But it is important there's a world in which he's a 3.8 ERA guy. You know what I mean? Which isn't bad, but that means he is not at full, Java Joe Musgrove absolutely cooking, which he has been cooking basically the entire time he's been with the Padres. Been one of the most underrated starting pitchers in baseball for a while now, right? But 3.88 ERA, that's what he was producing when he was looked like he was a little bit hurt that 1 year before the Tommy John surgery. So maybe that's what we should expect. So that leads Pivetta and Michael King. We'll see what AJ Preller's got cooking. In terms of the next, though, who will play first base, right? He mentions that Japanese star Kazuma Akamoto, or even in terms of just even having a chance at him, right? Seems like that was a little bit far-fetched to start, right? That's what at least Dennis Lin is reporting, which again, I talked about on Wednesday and why you need to take every rumor with a grain of salt, because it did make it sound like the Padres are engaged and they might talk with him and all that. Sounds like they just didn't have the funds for him. But remember, he's 29 years old. Maybe don't take a risk on a guy like that at 29. Maybe they don't have the funds to be able to do that right now, or the general feeling of we don't want to take a chance on a player like this that we don't think is as proven as some other major league commodities. And that's fine. He does bring up some of the guys that I brought up, right? Nathaniel Lowe, Rhys Hoskins, if they want to go that way. I could absolutely see that sort of happening. And I think it would make a lot of sense. Or trade options in Mark Vientos and Boston Red Sox's Tristan Casas. Vientos has been brought up on this podcast before. A lot of the comments were like, you're an idiot. This guy isn't very good. He was terrible last year, but he's very, very young at just age 26, right? If you could get that young, controllable player somehow from the Mets and just bet on him and say, you know what? We think you're a little bit closer to the 2024 version of you that hit 27 home runs in 111 games, and this team desperately needs power. We're down. We're just trying you at DH, subbing you in every now and then at a different position because flawed power is absolutely something that the Padres could take, right? If Vientos comes out next year and he has a 230 average and a 310 on base, but he hits you 25 home runs, that's great for this Padres team. They need power so desperately because right now, the only power options for the Padres, you're basically hoping that Tatis can figure it out. He had the hard hit data. He had the barrel rates. He had the average exit velocity. He had all that stuff, but he was unable to lift the ball consistently, so he only had 25 home runs. Then you have Jackson Merrill. Can he be a 25 home run player? I think so, but that's not like super duper power. And then you've got Manny Machado, who we have to hope that the age curve, that it doesn't kill him as much, which I don't think that it will. But over the course of a season, maybe it might, right? And then after that, it's like Bogarts ain't power. Sheets is a little bit of power, 20 home runs potentially. But after that, it gets really, really bad, right? So replacing the Arise spot with a power hitter in any fashion is going to be huge. And Tristan Casas, he's not quite like a big time sort of power hitter or anything like that, but he's certainly got a decent amount of ability to lace doubles and do that sort of thing, right? He had a 460 slugging not too long ago. He had 460 slugging, 490 slugging back in 2023. He can rip the ball a decent amount. So if he's a trade option, I could see it. And he was dreadful last year. So maybe the Padres want to, or the Red Sox want to move on. Maybe they think that he's just a more disposable player. At age 25, you could do worse. That's all I'm saying. You could do worse than that for sure. It would be really funny. This is when it happened, but it'd be really funny if like a Nick Pivetta trade occurred with the Red Sox. They're like, oh crap, we messed up. We should have had you back in the first place. And then that's what gets us Casas and other things. I'm not saying it would be a 1-for-1, but that would just be funny. That would just be really funny. Moving on, though, some other questions. How much spending room is left? Dennis Lin goes on to speculate that although it did seem, which is what's funny, he's like, I think that the King contract shows you that they don't really have much, right? In this case, it's likely Dennis Lin says it's likely that he goes down as just a 1-year, $22 million deal with $8 million in deferred and signing bonus payments. Could absolutely see that. I get what he's going on, but as he alludes to, they seemingly considered also signing both Michael King and Merrill Kelly, who went to sign a 2-year, $40 million deal. So again, my complaint on this podcast has been when people talk about the Padres, the words financial turmoil are used often. And that to me illustrates that they are going to become Milwaukee, that they are going to become Cincy, that they are going to become Pittsburgh. And to me, they're still in the tier above that in terms of spending, where they can get creative and they can go out there and make some signings. But how much is left? As of right now, probably not too much. Is there enough for a back end starter? Is there enough for Rhys Hoskins? I think so. Not guaranteed so, but I think so. And if they are going to move off some of their major league talent to shed some payroll, then definitely some more options are available, at least in my opinion, right? Then he says, which players are still trade candidates? Pivetta remains the Padres' most prominent trade candidate. If he is moved before opening day, Preller potentially would have another deal or multiple other deals lined up to replace some of his innings. However, Pivetta, who can opt out after the upcoming season, isn't the only one, though. Outfielder Ramon Laureano and reliever Adrian Morejon are among the other players who have come up in trade discussions with other teams, right? Cronenworth is another one who's owed $60 million over the next 5 seasons. Again, not horrible, but it'd be nice to shed some payroll, right? That would be really cool. He also says Mason Miller and Jeremiah Estrada have drawn external interest, but they aren't moving either reliever unless they get standout starting pitching in return. So again, looks like that kind of shuts down the Miller rumors that were mentioned in regards to the Mets reports, right? That the Mets and Padres were talking. Mason Miller was one of those guys mentioned. It makes sense, right? To keep Mason Miller and Jeremiah Estrada. Those are young guys with super control, and they're also really nasty, right? While Adrian Morejon is a guy that only has 1 year left, and he's probably in for a hefty payday. So I could see them moving on from him to get some more young, controllable players as part of some package, right? And then I really think it's interesting that he brings up Nick Pivetta as the most prominent, right? I've gotten some comments from y'all saying, you're an idiot, Javi. They would never trade him. Well, Dennis Lin thinks otherwise. He thinks that is a prominent guy. And again, I'm not saying I want to trade Nick Pivetta. That's not what I'm saying. Let me be very clear. What I'm saying is the idea of trading him and getting some young talent, filling out your depth should not be dismissed. It's not a guarantee that Nick Pivetta goes out and does what he did last year. And it's not a guarantee that bad players or players that perform poorly go out and do the same thing next year. Look at Dylan Cease. There's a reason why he got a big deal from the Blue Jays. Teams are betting that he's going to be a lot better next year. Don't just go by what you saw 4 months ago. Don't ignore it, but don't only go by that. That's not how you build sports teams, because otherwise anyone could do it. Am I right? Of course I'm right, guys. But you know who else is right when it comes to your sports betting needs? That's our friends over at FanDuel, who are officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. It's great. And you want to see what you get. It's just fun. It's exciting. So go check that out, guys. You make your picks and apply your profit boost. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So that this week, that would be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So be sure to go and check that out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. Just finished discussing some of the big questions facing the Padres, at least according to Dennis Lin. I still think another big question is probably the Darvish thing, at least a little bit. Whether or not he retires, whether or not they get creative. I think Dennis Lin not mentioning that probably means that it's just something that they'll figure out later, right? Potentially down the line, because they have to wait on Darvish. Like, does he still want to pitch? He's probably going to want to test out rehab and do that sort of thing. So we're not going to get an answer on that. And when I first talked about it during the offseason, it was before it was announced that he was out for the season, right? So we'll see. We're going to have to see. I think another question, not for the offseason, but something that I'm really curious about, is just what goes down at spring training, who ends up earning that fifth starter spot, because I actually think that there's going to be some competition here. I think it's going to be interesting to see if there's anything out of Tristan McKenzie, if he shows anything. Again, I know you're laughing at me. Gavin Sheets was signed to a minor league deal, and he ended up being a nice contributor for this Padres team. So can Tristan McKenzie ball out and pitch to a low 4s ERA and come back, and all of a sudden we're like, wow, this is really nice that we just have this guy? Sure. I've seen crazier things, man. And AJ Preller is a good scout for talent. Not always at the major league level. Definitely not always at the major league level. But for the most part, I am just really into it. And Matt Waldron is a guy that isn't discussed with Dennis Lin, right? I think Matt Waldron, it should not be forgotten that he worked on himself. He was a rookie. Maybe he was trying to bulk up or strengthen himself to be able to go for a longer load. Because if you remember, back in 2024, Matt Waldron at one point for the Padres was their number one starter in a lot of ways, right? Like, he genuinely was like carrying that team. And then he was awful to end the year, but he was at least good for a stretch of time. And that's what they need. They need innings, right? Especially if they were to trade Pivetta. So Matt Waldron, I'm not out on Matt Waldron. I think that he could be a guy who pitches to a low 4s ERA and just is a solid back end starter who gets you some strikeouts every now and then, has decent control, and can go out there and just pitch, right? If Randy Vasquez can do it, then I think Matt Waldron can, because I think that his peripherals are a little bit more impressive than something like what we've seen from Randy Vasquez. But let's move on to some of your questions and comments that I haven't gotten to yet this week. We got a lot of them, folks. First up, let's talk about AJ Preller real quickly. At DM310MD says, I still don't see the whole hype behind AJ Preller. The Padres haven't won any World Series under him as general manager, some of the contracts he's giving away, and the farm system and yada yada. Totally get that. What I want to say about this is it is so important not to judge players, executives only on World Series titles. That is horrible, because guess what? There's only one team that wins every year. It's really, really hard, especially in a division that has the Dodgers and frankly even has some tough teams, right? The Giants could rear their head back around. That organization, I think, is in a little bit of a bad period right now. They're not as trustworthy with the moves that they've made over the past few years, but even still, you have them, you have the D-backs. It's still a division, right? And then the National League, you also got the Phillies, you got the Mets, you got the Braves, you got all these jokesters to deal with. And in general, making the playoffs 4 out of your last 6 seasons, transforming the Padres, most importantly. So this has nothing to do with winning, but being an architect for what has made the Padres a top 5 team in attendance, a top level team in terms of drawing engagement, being a national discussion. That has to be taken into account too. And guess what? Some of us Padres fans, it's rare that they make the playoffs. So by those standards, historically, this is good stuff, right? You know what I mean? It's not like a Yankees fan base or a Dodgers fan base or I don't know, name another fan base right now. I can't think of another one, but like teams that are more accustomed to being consistent contenders. The Padres weren't. So you have to grade on a little bit of that curve, if that makes any sense. Phoenix Ash left a funny comment that I enjoyed on this, saying, yeah, bro, come on, Javi. Bro, why aren't you a fan, bro? Come on, bro. Like, be a true fan and run a podcast all about the team while being fully invested in pretty much every game and dig into stats and rumors, then break them down on a daily, semi-daily during offseason basis before you call yourself a fan, bro. Sheesh. He's messing around, of course. And this goes out to the commentators on this channel that hate when I suggest anything and then hate if I'm being negative. So it'll be like, Hey, I think they could trade Pivetta. Why would you trade him, bro? Like, he was great last year. And this is a common thing that every Locked On host and everyone that I know in baseball media goes through, especially baseball media. I don't know why it is with baseball specifically. And then if I'm like, yeah, man, I think Preller needs to do this. I think he's done a bad job here. You're like, what are you doing, man? Why are you being so negative? Like, this is the team. Be a fan. Show support. And I'm like, one day those type of commenters will understand exactly what I do on this show. But not everybody does. That just happens sometimes. Next question we got was from a Dodger fan. That is Rich JH9. If the Padres win the World Series in 2026, will you discount the championship because they had to spend $1.5 billion to get over the hump? Or is that critique reserved exclusively for the Dodgers? Because when it comes to Padres contracts, you go out of your way to avoid the word deferred. You'll fully describe a deferred deal, but you only label it as such when it's a Dodgers contract. That's not analysis, that's selective framing. Well, first of all, I will say that is a fair point. I do sometimes forget to include the deferral numbers because it's just not usually reported that way. So take up your beef with like some of the beat reporters, frankly, because that's like, it'll literally be like, that'll be like the thing that won't be in the initial blurb, I guess, if for lack of a better term, for the big free agents that the Padres sign with the deferred money and all that. And I will say that the Dodgers, it's a little bit different only because the Dodgers have deferred so much more money that other teams could potentially do. Right now, I do think that there are other teams that kind of got exposed by the fact that the Dodgers were deferring some money this future years, like kind of exposes some of these other cheapskate teams that'd be like, oh, you can't afford a $50 million deal. We'll defer some of it, spread it out across future years. It's not like baseball's going anywhere, right? Like, so I do think it did expose them, but I think it's a little bit unfair to compare the deferrals that the Padres do, right, to what the Dodgers do with Shohei Ohtani, for example. I think a team like the Mets might be a better example. I think they had a little bit of deferrals in some of their big time contracts. I could be wrong about that. I think Lindor had one. Again, I'd have to check this, but I think those teams are a better comp for that. And in regards to whether I discount it, I don't know how to explain that a team that has never won anything going out and spending, going out and doing big things and winning a World Series is different than a team that has always spent, granted, recently more than usual. I'm going to say the past 5 years or so, they've spent more than usual, right? The Dodgers have always been in like the top 6 of payroll spending. Go look it up. You guys can do the research yourself. They're always top level in payroll. There's a huge difference in the Padres emerging and becoming big spenders versus the Dodgers doing what they always do. And then just the hater part of me likes to bring up that, yeah, they were basically known for nothing but choke artists from 2011, can we say? I don't know. Let's say 2011 through 2020, right? Until they won the COVID championship in the shortened season. But no, before then, that's what they were known for, is that they were known for being really, really good in the regular season. The Peyton Manning of the sport, which is all-timer, Hall of Famer. But I think that is what gets brought up, which is what haters like myself bring up. So again, I think it is so much different for the Padres to become a big spender when they never have been versus the Dodgers always being big spenders and going even more over the top and spending like $3 billion combined on every free agent under the sun after choking in the playoffs basically every year for a long time. That's just me, though. I acknowledge the Padres bias, but hey, what can I say? The Padres bias is usually right. But with that all being said, guys, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. On Monday, we're going to answer more of your questions and comments, including one about Ethan Salas and whether or not his value is still going to remain if the ABS challenge system is brought to Major League Baseball, some slander about Tatis, all sorts of stuff, and a trade proposal about Tatis that I was going to get into this week, but I felt like it deserved its own segment. So that might be a Wednesday episode by itself, man. I am so tired of these fake Tatis trades, but looking forward to that. Everybody leave your questions and comments in the comment section below as well. And hopefully some news breaks over the weekend. And good luck to all my football fans out there, depending on what you're rooting for this weekend. We'll have to see how it all pans out. Really fun field this year. Really fun field. But until that next time, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Friday Faithful homies, take care.